Bailey Wilbanks and Chris Holt have been serving as um, our bridge to to Hill staff, really doing a lot of the listening and learning and designing and launching of this program. Allison Jones is our head of program strategy and management here at the Alliance, and she's really led a lot of the work listening to experts who manage other kinds of fellowships to help us make this as strong of a program as possible. When we talk about the Alliance for Health Policy, I think it's useful for folks to know a little bit about our history. This is an organization that's been around for more than 30 years. It was founded by Senators Danforth and Rockefeller. The idea was then that healthcare policy was very complicated and technical and difficult to understand, and also a really big part of the American economy and experience. And that for folks, in particular, those on the Hill, it was moving very quickly, and there needed to be a resource so that people could have nonpartisan context to better understand these issues. I think what that means 30 years later, we had a long time where we were hosting educational events for health staffers almost every other week on hot topics on health policy. And what that means is that we have generations of health policy leaders who have grown up with the Alliance programming. And so, today's health policy leaders, really people who are leading CMS or are in staff leadership positions on the Hill, or in academia or industry and health policy leadership roles, many of them have come up through that Alliance programming. And that helps us really strengthen our educational programming today because they are so helpful in serving as our expert community that we call on when we do our educational programming. Next slide. So in the past year or so, we've really honed our approach to programming to be as responsive to the current environment as possible. And what that means is we are always aiming at landing in an educate program, but we start with that listening to that broader communities, those health experts that I noted, the health policy experts that I noted earlier. So we do that a number of different ways for programs, whether that be doing interviews or hosting workshops. And the idea is really to make sure that we have multiple perspectives represented so that when we go into educate programming and we're bringing that information to our educational audience, that it's really informed by multiple perspectives and represents different points of view on a topic, as well as being very, in-depth content and esteemed experts. So when we think about incubate and educate and what it means for this fellowship, we go to the next slide. You can see that we took multiple steps as we developed this fellowship to make sure it was as useful, as timely, and as well constructed as possible. That means we, first did a landscape of a lot of the fellowships that were out there to make sure that we were not doing anything duplicative and that we were complementing the efforts and the resources that are currently available for congressional staff. We then did a number of listening sessions with organizations who lead fellowships. We did a number of meetings on the Hill with leaders, congressional leadership staff, congressional committee staff, and folks who are really looking to hire some of that next generation of health policy leaders. And then we also, hosted a working group of individuals who've been running fellowships for many years to understand what were best practices, what they had found worked and didn't work, and actually ended up releasing a report on that. So all of that is to say, we did a lot of deep thinking and consulting with that healthcare policy expert community, as well as the expert community on adult learning and fellowships as we developed this program to be as practical as well as well constructed as possible. So that's how we landed here, where we are today. We are now accepting applications. You may have seen this announcement in various places. We have this set up on our website. All of this is available. Um, and, we know that people are still very eager to learn as they were 30 years ago and to sharpen their own toolbox, sharpen the tools in their own toolbox. And, what we've learned is that, there's an appetite for ongoing learning opportunities for folks that are a little more tailored and allow people to work together. As well as the traditional programming that we do that goes kind of topic to topic. So we're super excited. We've been around for 30 years, and this is the first time we're launching a fellowship. And really glad that you have joined our call today to learn more. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Holt, who has been such an excellent partner in forming this program, to talk a little bit about our fellowship goals.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah, I'm going to talk first about our goals for the fellowship, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about what we think the value proposition is for potential fellows. So we have kind of four goals here. The first, Claire has alluded to this already. The Alliance has a history of developing health policy talent, and so for many of the senior folks that you'll meet around town, they actually early in their careers went to health policy or start to things like Health Policy Academy or the briefings that the Alliance puts on. And so, like for myself, when I first got to the Hill, the Alliance was a place that I went to learn health policy when I didn't know anything about it. So we want to continue to build on that past in cultivating the next generation of leaders. Our second goal is that, particularly for those of you who are on the Hill, you may have this experience that you are really smart. You're a subject matter expert in Medicare Part B, but you don't really know anything about Medicaid, or you're really up to speed on the UFAs because reauthorization just happened. I know it didn't, but assuming it had, but you really don't know anything about how the 340B drug discount program works or what the history of that is. And so one of the things that we heard was that there is this kind of this uneven kind of knowledge on the part of staff. And so we want to build a program where everyone who comes out of it is going to come out with sort of a shared basis of legislative history, of institutional history, and kind of a good, solid background on a broad swath of basic policy areas. Claire also mentioned our interviews on the Hill. And one of the things that we heard as we talked to particularly committee staff were the kinds of skills and the kinds of knowledge that they felt were lacking. And so we've really designed the program to try to help staff come up to speed very quickly. The thing that, for those of you who are on the Hill, I know when I was on the Hill, for folks in our broader policy community, the turnover comes up again and again, like how quick the turnover is on the Hill. And so we just want to step into that gap and be able to fill some of that need for resources to get up to speed. And then, Claire just mentioned this, right? This appetite for coordinated ongoing educational resources. That's something that we continue to find new ways to meet. And we just think this fellowship is going to be a really exciting opportunity in the long run for us to continue to supplement our existing program. Devin, we can go to the next slide. So the big question for most of you probably on the call is, why should I do this? What's in it for me? And I'll go through these, but if I were to summarize the value proposition that we believe that we're offering here, it's career growth, leadership development, substantive health policy education, the opportunity for bipartisan peer learning, and a program that is really tailored for congressional staff. We do understand what your jobs are like, and so we're trying to build a program that is useful to you and doesn't become a burden for you. So we think it's a high value program and there's no cost for you. So, as you look kind of through these, we think this collaboration component is really helpful. I know that when I was on the Hill, when I wasn't working for committee members, I sometimes felt pretty isolated. I didn't always have other staff, other offices that I could draw from as well. And so, we want to help you all build your network of other staff that you can learn from, that you can work with, et cetera. The other thing is that, well, I think all of our programming is really high value. This has been very much designed to be an exclusive set of programs at kind of a higher level, specifically targeted to people who are really looking to develop their career. And one of the things that we have, as I've mentioned, as Claire's mentioned, is this network of really senior health policy folks who have sometimes decades long relationships with the Alliance and are really eager to work with us. Devin, if we can actually jump to the next couple of slides, this is going to be an example. So this is our Health Policy Academy speakers from 2024. Health Policy Academy, we're going to talk about it in a minute. It's an optional thing for fellows. It's a little bit more entry level than what we're going to be doing in the fellowship, but it gives you a sense, if we can see the next slide too, of some of the kinds of people who are participating in our programs are eager to do so. If we can go back to slide 10, that would be great. So, again, mentioned this already a little bit, but, we did a lot of intentional interviews in the lead up to this with committee staff in particular, as well as leadership staff. I've spent years talking to staff about kind of what they need, where the gaps are. And so, we're really designing this to try to give you skills that the staff has told us they value in sort of the next set of hires that they're making. We think the program is going to give you the opportunity to develop leadership. You will get a certificate as part of this program. And then again, lastly, there's no cost to you. So with that, I'm going to invite Claire back in to talk a little bit about the curriculum.
Great. Thanks so much, Chris. So if you look at this curriculum, it looks different than what we envisioned when we first thought about this program. And the reason it looks different is because we heard directly from folks on the Hill exactly what's most important to them. So most and much of the Alliance's traditional programming is really built around content topics, understanding dual eligibles, understanding Medicare Part D, understanding, very specific parts of health policy. And what we heard loud and clear is that having a mix of information around specific content topics like that, and also some day-to-day skill build, is what is of most value to those folks looking for those next generation of leaders. And so that you can see that this program has really got both, right? So we know that reconciliation is going to be a hot topic in the coming months. That's something that everyone has worked on, it's just the way the sort of turnstile works, in terms of when we think about turnover, whether or not you've been around for reconciliation in the past. So that's something we heard directly that people want us to cover. Key moments in health policy history. I think one of the most persistent pieces of feedback we get from health policy leaders, people in senior positions, whether it be executive directors, the head of HHS, all of these different folks, is there are so many lessons to be learned at looking at what happened in some of the milestone pieces of legislation that exist in healthcare today. And that it's, we often don't have to start from scratch. And so that's a gap that we think is really important, and we want to help our fellows, fill. How to best work with committees, right? So what are they expecting? What do they want to hear? Where can they most be helpful? How can you partner with committee staff? It's a very, very practical sort of skill that is very much valued as people kind of climb their career ladder on the Hill. Prediction versus reality. When we're in the midst of the development of legislation, there's many models developed, different white papers drafted, different sources saying what we think the impact of the legislation will be. Again, this is an area where it makes sense to go back and say, is that what really happened, and what can we learn from that? And then finally, thinking about how we strategy approaches to policy. Another persistent piece of feedback we get is we need to be able to think a little longer term. And we would love to have people who have a little more practice in thinking about what happens in 5 years or 10 years and not just what happens in this session. So we've worked with some outside experts who, employing approaches that the DoD and others use to do long-term planning, to help people build that skill and just that approach to problem solving. So this is kind of a high level of what we expect to be covering. And again, you can hear how each one came from, sources either in our community or in the Hill leadership. If we go to the next slide, we can get to the next slide. What does this look like in practice? What's the time commitment? Is it a full master's program? It is not, right? Chris's point about we recognize that Hill staff have many, many demands on their time. This was also a point of feedback and a great place where we were able to learn from people who currently run fellowships about how to make this kind of programming work for people who are on the Hill. So you can see it's about one event a month. Each event we expect will be about 2 to 3 hours. And they'll be held at times that are not in conflict with the congressional calendar because that's not useful. Chris mentioned the certificate. One thing we learned from listening to experts who run other fellowships is that it's good to have a little bit of flexibility built in because, people have personal events or they have conflicts or they have an unexpected work priority. And so one of the things that we have built into this is that there'll be 1 to 2 optional events that will still allow you, you can attend the events and still get the certificate and have 1 to 2 be optional. So you have a little bit of flexibility built in as well. Again, we're trying to be very responsive to the needs of folks who have such demanding jobs. And then there's just one more slide on kind of what does that mean at a glance? And this is what the commitment is. So with that, I will have, so everyone can do math. It's about nine sessions total, 3 hours a month. We do think that self-guided piece, which is about up to 3 hours of self-guided work in advance, should be very, very helpful. We know that it's important to have some element of that for your own learning and growth as fellows, that you're able to dig into the content and to make sense of like, what does it mean to me? How does this make sense to me? And do things like have a little bit of leadership among your peers, present back your findings and have those kinds of opportunities as well. So we're going to do as much as we can in the room, but there will be a little bit of work and some reflections that come with it. So Allison's going to give you the details on how to make your eligibility and application. So I will hand it to her.
Great. Thank you, Claire. So as you all have heard, this is the Alliance's first ever Congressional Fellowship Program, which means whoever joins this first class will be pioneers and blazing new trails with us. We designed this program with a deep commitment to developing the next generation of congressional health policy leaders. And if you're selected, we can say that you won't just be learning, you'll really be helping shape this program for future fellows. So I'm thrilled to take a few minutes here to just share a bit more about eligibility and what we're looking for in a fellow. So when we spoke to senior leaders on the Hill about what they look for in the next generation of policymakers, they emphasized a few things. People who are on track to advance into more senior roles, those who are eager to deepen their expertise in health policy, and individuals with a demonstrated desire for structured learning and mentorship opportunities. So we're seeking rising stars in health policy, folks who are early to mid-career congressional staff who are eager to expand their expertise. Specifically, we're looking for folks who have 1 to 5 years of full-time Hill experience. No prior health policy experience is required, just an interest in diving deeper. And you must be a current congressional employee. So this will be evaluated based on your position as of the application deadline. This fellowship is designed to prepare the next policy leaders on the Hill, and we're looking to expand and deepen our Alliance community as well through this programming. So we hope to invest in individuals who are committed to the long-term growth of health policy expertise in Congress. The application process is simple and straightforward. Please submit your application using the online application form, which I think we're going to link in the chat here for your reference. The application includes 4 short answer questions, 150 words or less, designed to help us better understand your goals, your strengths, and your approach to bipartisan collaboration. As part of the application, we also ask that you upload a copy of your latest resume and a letter of acknowledgement from your supervisor. And we do have a sample on our website that you can use, which hopefully makes this a light and easy lift for you. Now, I know not everyone here is congressional staff, but you may know someone who would be a perfect fit. And that's where our nomination option comes in. So if you want to recognize a rising star, you can nominate a candidate by providing their name, office, and email, and a notification email will be sent to them. We also have a sample email that you can use, or we can reach out on your behalf. We encourage you to submit nominations as soon as possible, ideally in the next day or two, so we can follow up before our deadline. This program is about investing in the next generation of leaders, and your nomination can help us ensure that we have a diverse and talented applicant pool. So we're really excited about this fellowship and the impact it will have. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And you're thinking about applying or nominating someone, please know now is the time. And so with that, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Bailey Wilbanks, who will share more information about our selection process and timeline.
Thanks, Allison. So I'm going to give a high-level overview of our selection process just to give you a sense of what the next couple of weeks are going to look like. So as a reminder, applications close February 21st, so please be sure to get your applications in. Once applications close, we'll begin the process of selecting candidates to interview. Those interviews will take place the week of March 3rd and March 10th, and they'll be no longer than 30 minutes, and they'll be a virtual call. We will then announce our fellowship cohort in mid-March with our fellowship orientation taking place on March 27th. So if we go to the next slide, Devin. But wait, there's more. Perfect. So Chris mentioned this, but to give you a sense of the type of programming the Alliance conducts with congressional and agency staff, we wanted to preview our annual Health Policy Academy. So Health Policy Academy is one of the Alliance's hallmark and longest running programs. It stems from a need to equip congressional and agency staff at the start of their careers, or maybe if they're new to health policy, with practical knowledge and about the fundamentals of health policy and the legislative process. So panels typically cover 101s on health insurance coverage in the United States, introduction to the regulatory process and how staff can interact with the administration, a review of Congress and the legislative process through the lens of health policy, what committees have jurisdiction in health policy, what is leadership's role in that. And as Chris mentioned, Health Policy Academy features a lot of former staff who can offer best practices and lessons learned, many of whom attended Health Policy Academy when they were on the Hill, which is always fun. So while our fellowship will have some more advanced topics than Health Policy Academy, we do really encourage everybody to attend if you're congressional and agency staff. This event is free and again, open to congressional and agency staff. So I think we can go to the next slide, Devin. So this year, we're really excited to announce that Health Policy Academy will be taking place on Thursday, April 10th at Top of the Hill. We'll send around the registration link in the chat. But again, want to flag that it's for congressional and agency staff only. So with that, I think we can get into, the fun part of this, which is Q&A. So I think we can go to the next slide, Devin. So please submit your questions in the chat. We'll answer as they come in. And, hopefully we answered a lot of your questions in the presentation, but we'll answer any questions in the chat. And if we miss any questions, we'll be following up after the webinar with an FAQ document and a recording of today's webinar. So hopefully equip you with plenty of information to answer any questions. So while questions are populating or while everyone's thinking, we can talk about some common questions we've been receiving. So one of the questions I know we've gotten, and Allison, I think I'll let you take this one. Some people have said that, in the midst of searching for a new job on the Hill, as we all know, jobs on the Hill are incredibly competitive, and some people are not currently on the Hill, with this new Congress, but are actively trying to get on the Hill. So should they apply now in the chance that they might have a position by the time we start doing interviews?
Great question, Bailey. So we do encourage you to apply. Even if you don't currently have a position, we will be considering candidates based on their employment status as of our February 21st deadline. So there is still time. And if you have any questions or a specific situation that you want to talk to us more about, we do have an email that we're going to share at the end of this webinar as well, that we encourage you to reach out to.
Perfect. And then I think this is another question for you, Allison. Another question we've gotten a lot is, what is the schedule right now for the fellowship? Will it conflict with my typical, 9 to 6 p.m. work schedule?
Yes, so we will be designing our events around your availability. That's one of our priorities for tailoring this experience to the people who participate in our Congressional Fellowship Program. And so while the events will likely take place on Thursday afternoons, we will be inviting folks who are selected as finalists to share their availability and preferences as well. And we will be doing our very best to work around all schedules so that the timing is, ideal for the cohort that we select.
Perfect. I think we'll give everybody a minute to maybe think if they have any questions. And if not, we can always end early, but want to give you all time to digest all the information you just heard.
One thing I want to note is that the fellowship link and the nomination link are both in the chat. Bailey did drop those. So if you're wondering if there's somebody I want to nominate, you definitely can have a look at that link. And if you are thinking of applying yourself, I would look at the fellowship link. One thing I want to encourage folks is this is the first year, and Allison mentioned, you'll be in a pioneering class. If you're someone who is interested in this fellowship, it is competitive, but it is also the first year. And I think one thing I would encourage you to do is invite other peers who you think would also benefit from this program. Because it's the first year, I think you have a very good chance, of being considered. And so I wouldn't, hide this sort of under a bushel from your friends. I would definitely, it'll be more fun if your friends are there as well. So I would definitely encourage folks to pass this around. If you think it's of interest to you, and you think it's of interest to your peers, I would definitely share that link. So Bailey, where can people have their questions answered if they wanted to send something as a follow-up or they think of something later? Where's the best place for people to send their questions?
I think we are getting some questions in the chat,
Okay.
but we also have, I think it might be on the next slide, but I can send it in the chat. Our Congressional Fellowship email is a good place to also send questions if you have a question in a few days. So I'll send that in the chat as well.
And so Bailey, I'm happy to chime in. I see one here about the size of the cohort. How large is the cohort? We are aiming for up to 35 folks to join us as part of this program. And I can keep going. I see another one here about someone thinking about an office change in the next couple of months and wondering if that would be an issue with their application, knowing that a recommendation from a current supervisor is needed. That's a great question. We know that things change. And so all we ask is that before the deadline, the letter of acknowledgement is from your current supervisor. And then we would work with individuals on a one-on-one basis if their employment situation changes once they start the fellowship program, just to touch base and make sure that we also have that acknowledgement letter on file from their current supervisor as well.
And then I know somebody else in a chat about reiterating when decisions are going to be made. So just to reiterate, applications close February 21st. So be sure and get your applications in, or if you're nominating, be sure and nominate people in the next couple of days to give them time to apply. And so once those applications close, we'll begin our process of selecting the people that are going to move to the interviews. Those interviews will take place March 3rd and March 10th, and they'll be quick virtual meetings. And then we'll announce the fellowship cohort in mid-March. And then we'll have a fellowship orientation on March 27th. I know that those are a lot of dates, but we're gonna send a recording of this to everybody, and a frequently asked questions document. So hopefully everything will be in writing for you there too.
Looks like one more question, and then maybe we can wrap. I know we're a little bit over time. Do you anticipate this being an annual program? So we're hopeful that this will be an annual program. It's something that we are piloting. And I think we will take those learnings and be, looking to making a very strong case for us to be able to do this on an annual basis. Great question. I think with that, team, we can probably wrap. Thanks to everyone for joining us. I really appreciate everyone's interest and curiosity. I think just by being an interested and curious person, it's a good sign that you might be a good candidate for this fellowship or know someone who is. And we really look forward to hearing from folks, either with questions, applications, nominations, et cetera. We'll be looking to hear from you. Thanks so much.